All right, all. This is the current podcast. Check out our website, cvrnt.com. This is Kirk.
Yeah, this is Ragz. It's been a little bit of a hiatus for us.
Yep.
It's been almost a couple months since our last recording. I've been out attending my brother's wedding in India, and then I'm on pat leave, and Kirk's been pretty busy himself.
Yeah, still, I'm trying to upload some of our podcasts on YouTube if you'd rather just listen to those like while you're at work or, other places. But anyway, staying busy.
We're trying a few different, avenues to try and reach y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Wedding was good. I was trying to shoot some 360 video out there, actually, since, I have my Theta S, and Indian weddings do lend themselves pretty well to some 360 recordings. There's a lot of stuff happening all the time. So there's not a lot of my family out there, including my brother who actually lives out here in the East Coast, who had actually seen too much 360 video or experienced much of it. It was actually a pretty fun experience. I recorded a few minutes of a few different things. I didn't do a ton of extensive recording. I was able to do that, and then I showed it to my brother and my relatives afterwards because they really didn't know what I was taking pictures or videos of when I was sitting there with the Theta S holding it up and recording.
Looking like Gandalf with a staff.
Yeah,
and I know, a baby in one hand and the Theta S
in the other. I would literally just take the Theta S and kind of stick it up in the sky and then kind of up high and then just click. And then kind of smile and look up and click, and people are just like, "What are you doing? Like, what are you taking a picture of?" And I was like, "Don't worry about it. I'll show you later." And the reaction afterwards was pretty fun. I just used a Google Cardboard, and it was simple. I just showed it to them on my phone, and they were kind of like blown away by how immersive even that experience seemed, and they were. I wish I'd recorded their their reactions. It was super fun actually, because they were just like, "Oh my god, look at that! Oh wow, this feels like, oh wow, that's like right. I'm like right there. Oh wow, this is really cool."
So what's funny about it is that I think like while you were out at the wedding, I had been reading some articles and people just kind of talking about the industry and about how 360 video maybe isn't as compelling and it's not really solving a problem. And I was kind of thinking the same thing. I was just like starting to agree with the naysayers out there and say, I'm never really driven to go check out much 360 content yet, although all these creators are really into making it. And so it was like a conflict for me. It's like, well, supposedly there's all this great content, but I'm not really going the extra step to go check it out. And then I don't know, somehow I think I brought that up with you. And then that's when I found out you were actually recording at your brother's wedding. And then for me, that was kind of cool because, in the future, looking back at your brother's wedding, like having that 360 video might be a lot more compelling versus like, some external creator's story that isn't as personal to me, right?
So I'll definitely say that 360, if people are trying to replace taking video, like actual HD video with their even their phones themselves, like the new iPhones are out, or the Pixels, or any of the newer devices, Samsung Galaxies, even them, just a regular video that they take are, pretty high quality as is. And I'm comparing this to so I'm looking back at, my parents' wedding or things that, like 20, 25, 30 odd years ago, you didn't have the ability, like the pictures you saw were maybe black and white a little, like my parents' wedding, they have some video, but they also have all these black and white photos, and the few that I see, they're enough to give me this kind of warm and fuzzy and understand how things are. And I think 360 video is the same thing right now. Like a lot of the content that's being produced right now, it's very exciting because the people who are using it and taking video, they feel really immersed. And I think
the one thing I brought up, sorry to cut you off, is the thing I brought up though is that once I got the headset on, like what the Daydream platform is pretty good about is pretty easy to jump in and out of other content. So I could easily jump into YouTube or some of the other apps in there that have like Within or Verse, I think, and some of these other apps that have 360 content. Mm-hmm. So once I'm there, I was like, okay, I'm trying to force myself to check out the content, and I enjoy it. It's not that I don't enjoy it, but it's it's that hurdle of first putting on the headset.
Well, see, that's the thing. It's starting to become easier to consume. So before you kind of needed like a Gear VR, you needed a cardboard at the very least, and even now I would argue that if you had one of those cardboard VR, something or the other. It's a little bit more immersive, but because Facebook has started allowing you to, they've been doing this for a while now, actually, maybe probably a year or so, where they've allowed you to just share 360 photos and videos and experiences, and you can just move your phone around, and then you could put it in that mode where you could just move your phone around and look at things. Even that is actually making it easier to consume these things. Like, so I think you were mentioning that they announced 360 capabilities on Twitter. So you could always share 360 video. I think the live streaming capability is what's new.
Yeah, so there was some news that came out, and I think that's something that, maybe we'll try and explore in the future. But apparently you can just kind of live broadcast 360 video through Periscope and using your Twitter account. So hopefully we can try and check that out when it's available, because I think it's the next step, like even for us, right? Like we've been talking about, like how do we maybe get our podcast into more of a VR environment, and maybe 360 video is a good step. I don't know. I mean, it's like I said, I've pretty much enjoyed every 360 video I've ever watched.
Every single one you've ever watched, you've enjoyed it.
Yes, verbatim. No, I mean...
I'm sorry, I'm being facetious.
Yeah, no, I was trying to think. Like, I've only ever watched ones that are, usually recommended by a lot of people.
Like in the news, or like they're stuff. And that's the thing, right? So, and I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is like seeking out good 360 video. I don't know, maybe we need to do a little research to see if...
I'm putting the challenge to you, actually. I think both of us, we should at least attempt. And if any of our audience has any cool video that they think we should check out, like, let us know.
Yeah.
And then we can at least check it out. Because I think, like, well, as interested we are in maybe all the other areas of virtual reality, like the 360 video is still a growing area, and I'd like to learn more about it anyway.
Yeah.
And see what's out there, all the experiences.
I think eventually what's going to happen is 360 video at this point, in this little period, is going to be some of the first experiences that are out there. I think the people who are sticking them to a drone and then like shooting from a drone and things like that, there are people trying a lot of stuff out. And so a lot of the content that's coming out right now, I think will be like the early days of, like, photography, filmography, videography, like digital photography, where, you had these things that were really cool. The capability and the ability for you to record things a certain way, the novelty of it is really nice. And then people keep iterating on it, and then eventually it gets to a point where it is, really high def, really well. Like, it's not going to be that far in the future where they figure out the resolution problems and things like that, and where we're gonna get very high res images from these things. We're at the the 2 megapixel, 3 megapixel big digital digital cameras that came out that back in the early 2000s. I think that's where we are now with like 360 video. In fact, like, there was a ad flowing on Facebook where you had an external peripheral device you could stick into your iPhone, and you could basically make your phone a 360 camera, because it basically just had two 180 lenses, and then it was software within the phone to take care of that. So once they start doing that, eventually it's just going to be either it's going to live as a peripheral device that's going to just keep getting cheaper, or I think what you're going to end up seeing is the phones themselves will just come up with a way to make a strong enough front and back, rear facing, and find a way to get like 180s on both sides and just make them 360 cameras or devices to begin with.
We talked a lot more about 360 than I thought we were going to, but I mean, I think like as it evolves, one interesting tech that's coming out with the 360 video is volumetric 360 video, so you can actually see some depth and volume of objects and stuff, and it's nice. Kind of like the next step. But so you can already see where we need to get more HD, we need to get, or 8K, the resolution's gonna get better, but also maybe getting more depth in the video that is being recorded. And there's a lot of it. I think NVIDIA might have done a demo recently at their show. Anyway, so like that's all. It's all just a roadmap. It's just gonna keep evolving.
Sure.
And, it's cool with the creators. I mean, I think what's great about creative types is that they definitely bend the rules and explore and try out new things. So maybe sometimes more than like the engineers might.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. I think there's a set of people who just kind of go and they take the opportunity to try random ass stuff, and when you keep like pegging away at it and from different angles, that's when you start like coming up with some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Moving quickly into like some of the industry stuff that we want to talk about, I guess that's a good segue into the Daydream and Daydream related stuff. There's a bunch of Daydream related news that's kind of come out recently, and one of the things talking about crazy things you can do, Kirk had shared this article about how these guys essentially found a way to make a Daydream, convert it into something that was being tracked by the Vive trackers.
Yeah, I think what you were trying to bring up was with Daydream. Right now, you really have like just 4 degrees of freedom, so you can turn your head left and right, up and down, and move in a circle. But you can't freely walk around. You don't have the full 6 degrees of freedom like you do with the HTC Vive, where you can like walk around an environment. So I think what you're bringing up was these guys took the Vive tracker that was announced at CES. It's kind of the puck that allows you to attach it to different devices and see those devices in your in-game or in your VR experience. And they slapped it on a Daydream headset.
So just real quick, so the puck device, it basically looks like the top part of the handle of the Vive, right? It's essentially, that's what it is, a Vive controller, right? Like just not the handle, but that top black thing with the sensors. So it's essentially that thing, right? I think is what it is, and you can just kind of screw it onto whatever device. And I think I saw in the same article that was announcing that Vive tracker, which they just announced recently, I guess, at CES. Was it at CES that they put that out there?
Yes.
Yeah. So you could basically kind of screw it into anything. Like you can mount it on like a baseball bat. You can mount it on any object that you want tracked by the Vive. And so it's just
So I think the cool thing there is that the accessory is meant for the Vive.
Yeah.
But what we were bringing up was that these guys did this crazy hack where they slapped it on
Daydream,
Daydream, and then they were able to use the mobile phone and then pick up the spatial, I guess, location,
right,
and then somehow bring that back into the game real time, and then allow you to basically have that same type of freedom where you can like walk around with the regular light boxes
right
for the Vive, but using a mobile headset. So the upside to this is like you're not tethered to the computer. It's
correct,
mobile.
Yeah, I mean, so this is like, and just along the same lines, another thing that I just found out yesterday was Leap Motion. Actually, they said that they've created new technology using the Snapdragon processor, the Qualcomm Snapdragon processor, to allow you to essentially look at your hands. And those of you who don't know what the Leap Motion controller is, it's basically a small USB controlled device to your computer, and then you can just kind of see your hands move in this 3D space. And you can look at your hands as they're moving. They have a lot of applications for it, and there's like a Leap Motion store and everything they're doing. And so they've been involved really heavily in trying to bring that technology into, working with the Vive, the Oculus, like all these other platforms. And you could actually use there's an extra USB port, I believe, with the HTC Vive itself. So you could get a Leap Motion mount and then plug it into the USB on your headset, and then you can essentially get the ability to see your hands in front of your face. Instead of using the controllers, you can actually just use your hands themselves to start looking at things. So it's early days yet, but they've announced that they're able to put that into a kind of Daydream / cardboard / gear type of form factor. So I think the next big thing is you're going to see them try to get this technology, the Leap Motion sensors, along with the Snapdragon processor, and try to incorporate that directly into these headsets. And once they do that, then you're now solving one big problem that you'd brought up when we talked about the Daydream, which was the ability for people to be able to interact with things without having to hit buttons either on the headset or hit things on the side. Now you have this pure, like, untethered experience. Now you don't even need that little tracker, click button-y tracker thing. I mean, maybe you still do the controller for the Daydream. You can now just use your hands to pick things out of air. In fact, that would become even more kind of immersive and interactive than the Vive to some extent, because you have these controllers or Oculus. Now, they may solve that with the next gen, tracker technology they're coming with. I believe they're coming up with a controller that's similar to the Oculus kind of crunch type controller, where it's more like a glove / wrist / circle type thing, as opposed to what they have right now, which is a grip long handled, controller. So I think that's going to be pretty big when that happens. But that leap motion thing, that was pretty cool. But coming back to the Daydream, which is what we started talking about, they just announced, what was it, all space support for Google Daydream.
Oh yeah, so that was kind of out of the blue. So I guess what's weird about the Daydream platform right now is there's not a lot of like leaks on what applications are coming out. So it's kind of hard to know, it just makes sense that like all these different vendors or whoever has an app that's like on Samsung Gear or maybe it was on the original Google Play Store, like it makes sense for them to jump and have an app on the Daydream like App Store. It's kind of the splintered like subset of the Google Play Store. So I know I do want to talk about Altspace, but what happened was, Google kind of had tight lip on, or only allowed certain developers access to deploy on the Daydream App Store. But over the holidays, they, or over the past couple weeks, they actually sent out an email to all the Daydream developers saying they're going to open up the platform and let anyone, submit apps to get on the Daydream App Store.
Yeah. Nice.
But in doing so, yes, nice. But this is where it gets funny. In doing so, they actually sent the email to all their developers' email addresses to everyone. So everybody was CC'd on this, and it was like 500 developers like globally who've all been trying to get their apps in the App Store. All of a sudden, we're sent the same email, and a huge email chain started with all the developers CCing each other.
So like they're all on C, so everyone could see everyone's email.
Yeah, well,
basically.
it just created this big email chain. Everybody's replying like, well, I mean, first off, you can learn kind of what companies are already, building for the platform. But the upside was a lot of people were like, wait, we need a Slack channel, or we should grow a community so we can work together to build better games, to build better support, to support each other, get our apps on the App Store together. And like, that's kind of what came out of it, was like almost this great thing where everybody was like a leak that turned into a very positive thing, right? So now all these developers are more connected with each other and literally are working with each other to try and get their apps, and talk about like, what types of applications are working well on the platform, or how to monetize, or how, why not to monetize, and, just having all the discussions you'd have if you're creating an app. Right?
So I wonder, that I think that's what, I mean, when I first kind of initially heard you talking about it, one of the things I'm thinking about is that something that the way things progressed with maybe the cell phone industry, with apps coming on smartphones, or where people started off talking to each other. I don't know, like I can't get a full feel of how the community, it seems like at least at this point, the VR community, because it's in budding phases and because there are all these new things that are coming out, where we tend to talk to other people who are into VR, because there's so few of us, I guess it's not as mainstream yet. I wonder what's going to happen once it becomes mainstream and becomes an actual profit-making thing, and once bigger corporations get involved in like intellectual property and things like that. Do you think that might start slowing down development to some extent, because people are now trying to turn a profit, so they kind of don't want to share the things they're working on so that they don't give that competitive edge to someone else? Or do you see the VR community being kind of slightly different, or playing out different, where it just is a more open and kind of generally more accepting kind of space? Or is it going to kind of go the way that other things have in the digital world, where it's like, no, I'm gonna keep my secrets close to the chest a little bit, and then I need to find a way to get this out to the public before the next guy can, with the same features or close enough? Is it gonna get into that race, like, do you think? Or do you think like it'll just kind of be like, no, we're just gonna keep being cool with each other? And
definitely in the short run, I think tide rises all boats, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, looking at the mobile platform, or mobile app environment right now, I do feel like at least a lot of the indie developers are still trying to support each other and help everyone learn to build the best applications they can. And I think there'll probably always be a segment where, there's some indie developers still kind of growing the community or being connected with each other and trying to support each other. Because I guess that's how you compete, right? Against like the larger companies that have teams and teams of people.
I guess the other big difference though is I think now, as opposed to maybe 10, 15 years ago, like sharing more of your stuff with other people in the industry was less prevalent. Whereas now it seems like the big focus is, let's open source things more to get others from the community, allowing them to contribute and learn more about these things that we're building. And I wonder if that is going to help kind of push and keep things a little bit more open with VR stuff, because it's kind of basing itself coming out of that culture of openness, as opposed to in the past where it was more, closed shop, like don't come look at what we have to do. I mean,
You know what you made me think of? It's just that we have kids going into high school right now that were born after the .com bust.
yeah,
Like, so you're just like talking about, now with open source, right? Like this next generation and wave, right? Like it's like, the internet always existed, right? And just like this, like they think open source first. So anyway, I think that'll hopefully benefit us all as consumers, because, open source, I think, helps balance out maybe, some of the other scenarios that are driven by like closed door systems that are usually based on revenue and, stock growth and, all those other things. Okay. So wait, so alt space. So I think the Daydream, the comments I had about Daydream's like ecosystem, you don't hear a lot of leaks of what is coming up. And then just like 2 days ago, there was just all of a sudden AltSpace is now available on the Google Daydream platform. And anyway, this is exciting for me because this is, again, I talk a lot about Daydream because it's the only headset I have access to right now.
Don't say only headset, man. It's okay. A headset's a headset. Like there are people out there
True.
with,
but there's some people that are like, oh, I don't like mobile. They only want to talk about like, full, VR experiences like Oculus or Vive. And I guess like,
I think they're just different. I think there are people who are going to benefit from you having a Vive like setup or Oculus setup where it's fully immersive. And I think there are people who, like, I give a really good example, like, again, a good chunk of the world has not experienced or seen a lot of this stuff, like put on these headsets or anything. So even a rudimentary cardboard along with on the phone 360 video was something that gave them opened this new kind of channel for them, which is a big enough deal. So I think that's what these smaller headsets are going to give you, a kind of a window into like what stuff is available and what you can do with it. And then I feel like the bigger headsets come in as the heavy hitters, like the kind of premium kind of deal, or places where you'd have to go and, rent some time, or, eventually costs are going to drive down, and I think people will have it. And that would be the point where we'll have to bring this question back up, is if the bigger and more immersive controllers keep kind of rendering down their form factor into a more mobile kind of shape, then will the Gears and the Daydreams and such catch up the same way bottom up, as opposed to them taking this huge headset or tracking, like the Vive. Let's think of the Vive headset, right? Because I'm looking at it right now. Is like taking that and making it smaller and smaller and finding ways to kind of minimize that some more and still give you this really rich, fulfilling experience where you could get that, let's say, whereas now it's, I don't know, $700, I think, on the open market, it's $700 or $800. Whereas if you could spend $300 on it, and it's really high res, and it's better than PSVR, and it's better than, like, way better than a $70 Google Daydream. Now the prices for those are going to keep dropping as well. But if my question essentially is like the Vive and like these other bigger headsets rendering down, will they get to a point where they just blow away all this competition, or will they even put out mobile headsets themselves where they can actually have like a Vive Lite or an Oculus Lite?
It's funny you brought that up, because I think there is news. HTC brought out an announcement that they are looking at releasing a mobile version of sorts.
Yeah, which only makes sense, right? Like they have the technology, like why wouldn't you? And in fact, they might even be like, it might be like the PlayStation Vita console, essentially the PlayStation Vita or Vita or however you pronounce it. It's basically the game console, the PlayStation game console that you have that's individual. So you could have a Vive, and if you have the Vive trackers, and if you have the mobile, it would probably work with everything, but it already has the tracking and everything built in. So you could essentially choose to use it with the trackers, without the trackers. You could maybe even switch from an experience with, if you have a mobile experience and you're on the mobile headset, you can just seamlessly transition onto the Vive. That would be pretty insane if we could get that. But yeah, it totally makes sense that that's the direction they're going to go in. I don't know, we'll just have to kind of wait and watch as to what happens with that, because the one thing that was different with CES, I know we haven't talked a whole lot about CES because of that. A lot of it was either software related, or they didn't really announce a whole bunch of hardware like and we kind of expected that. And I think they had they had an extra audio strap or something with better audio you could get.
Yeah, it was a better is a strap kind of like the PlayStation VR where you just kind of like turn a crank instead of having to deal with like Velcro. So it actually looks kind of nice, but so it replaces the Velcro straps on the Vive, and then so the adjustment should be easier, but it has built-in headphones and a microphone.
Okay.
And I think like it's kind of, probably a adjustment based on Oculus's headset plus, it's kind of a mix of what's probably good from both the PlayStation VR and Oculus. Makes sense. I think that's a great part. Again, competition. Everybody brings out whatever they think works best, and they can learn from each other and iterate.
Speaking of Oculus, actually, that leads into another fun little topic.
Oh, yes.
I don't know how many people actually know about this, but Zenimax, I guess they've had a long-standing lawsuit go on against Oculus where they've essentially said that, was it Palmer Luckey who'd worked for Zenimax before?
Yeah, I think there was John Carmack, who's now the CTO at Oculus, used to be an employee with Zenimax. So the lawsuit, I believe, is something to do with like whether Zenimax code was used in building out the Rift headset and some of the video games or the software at Oculus.
Right.
So now Zenimax after Oculus.
Right. And I think that's what, so the case actually, the judge ruled against Oculus, so, or rather for Zenimax. I haven't read the full extent of the thing. I think the announcement was just yesterday where they said that Oculus lost that case, but now Zenimax is basically saying, we don't want you to sell any more Oculus because, you're causing major loss of income for us because this would be our product. And so I think this is kind of a huge deal at this point. I would expect that this is possibly going to shake things up quite a bit, because saying that Oculus headsets are using some other proprietary code and they either need to pay out, and I think they were asking for like $1 billion or a couple billion for that, and seeing as how Facebook has kind of gone all in with Oculus and they're trying to iterate really fast, this is going to be a snag. It's going to be a pretty significant issue, I think. If they don't pay them off, it might come back to bite them. And I'd have to see how much it's going to slow people down or spook developers from developing more content for Oculus, because they're like, I don't know how this is going to play out. I know the Vive is just an individual product and they're fine. So maybe we can just keep iterating on the Vive and figure out what's happening with Oculus, so slow down on the Oculus development and work more on Vive. I don't know how that's going to happen, but it's something to keep our eye on.
So I guess I want to give a little more background. So I was looking up Zenimax. So a lot of people might not have heard the name Zenimax, but from looking up on the good old Wikipedia, the most trusted source on the internet, it looks like they're a parent company to a lot of, subsidiaries, and like one of those is Bethesda. So Bethesda makes a lot of games like Fallout and the like, and so it's a big company that's going after Oculus, and that's just I think going back to what you're saying with like, will developers like maybe pull back from the Vive a bit, or sorry, will developers pull back from Oculus a little bit to see how things shake out? It's funny you said that, because it seems like I haven't heard a lot of news over the past couple weeks about Oculus, anything positive. Everything that I've heard come through really has been kind of negative, and all based on this lawsuit. That's kind of been the big news story. As well as, I was also thinking like even Microsoft with their headsets they were launching. Haven't heard a peep about that. Maybe some HoloLens news, but like Vive right now just seems to be taking all the
and we'll have to look into see whether Vive has actively been trying to, I guess, push their product a little more, if they're pushing a little bit more with the marketing, because it does seem like it's more in the news like you were saying. And I wonder if that's more a consequence of them making a concerted push, saying, okay, well, there's some negative stuff going on about Oculus, we just need to push some marketing,
take advantage of it.
Yeah, take advantage and basically hit back. And I wonder if that's what's kind of happening right now. But it's this is going to play out, and if this plays out in a bad way for Facebook or Oculus and it spooks people away, it's going to be hard for them to recover. Now they have tons of resources, so I don't see people like in the long term. I think Zuck will figure it out. They have a lot of cash reserves. They'll settle a lot of court most likely, especially if it's against, because they know how much money there is in there, and so does Zenimax and all the parties involved. But that's something to really keep our eye on, to see what is going to happen with that.
So speaking of other strange news in the VR community or industry, this company Camsoda. Now, this is a not safe for work website. It's an adult website. Let's talk about what it is. So basically, this company came out with, I think at CES, they launched this concept of basically these canisters that release different smells so that when you're in a adult VR experience, you can get a more sense, an immersion of being within that adult experience scene. And you can imagine the different scents, and they're very clear, I think, on the body odors and different smells. Like, I mean, it's ridiculous. And if you see the site, it looks straight up like you have a gas mask strapped to your face, and then you have the VR headset strapped to your face. Like, you kind of start looking like Snake from Metal Gear, or
or like Bane.
Yeah,
or something?
Bane. Yeah. That's it. That's what I was trying to think of. But it's like super ridiculous. But then man. They've obviously thought it out, and it doesn't seem like it's April Fool's joke. It looks pretty legitimate. Now
just to make a quick reference to one of our older episodes, we talked about this episode of Nautilus from South Park, where they were kind of talking. They were making poo jokes there, but it's weird, right? They put this out, and we were like, everyone was kind of like, that's funny, that's crazy, VR could go there, ha, that's stupid. And then now, okay, we're let's kind of going away from the use case, like the idea of something like this being there. And I read a little bit about, so when I was like clicking, since I was looking on the link, I was and we'll post the link, and the link itself is, we would say that thing itself doesn't really have, I guess, has some not safe for work content, but it's not, it doesn't have like porn on it or anything. It's just the way it describes the thing. Anyway, but it seems like they have these little, like you're saying, like little canisters. Think of it as like little, I don't know if you all have seen like the little e-cigarette cartridges or things like that, where there's a little bit of liquid, and then it's just, so you kind of plop these liquid canisters, depending on the smell profile you want or whatever, into that gas mask, the Bane mask, and then depending on the experience, it figures out the mix of what these little things. Think of it as if you had something that let you control the audio for your experience using, like you can pull up the bass a little higher and then the treble a little lower, and like things like that. You could kind of adjust these settings. So it seems like it's something like that, where they figured out you have like a profile, you can mix it, and then it releases some of these odors and a little bit within the experience to let you, I guess, smell. Yeah. Now, going towards, like, if you put this, let's say you incorporated this eventually with the Vive or things like that, then to be in a field, in a meadow or something outside, and then you have like the sounds and you have like a breeze like you have in the experience, and then you could smell these flowers and do whatever, that something like that, it's the idea of getting us further and more immersed, and leave it to the porn industry to like solve this problem before other people do.
I mean, I was just thinking, like, imagine a bug in the software where all of a sudden it's just like overload of scents, and then yes. Like, people are already concerned about getting sick like, on a roller coaster VR experience.
Then you could smell the puke from the guy in front, like, if this is really scary.
But I mean, like, all of a sudden it's like, you could get this crazy overload of, sensor, like, of your senses just being on overdrive. Maybe that's the future. We can make everybody go slightly insane.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I don't know. But to try and end this on a more positive note and a less weird note, I guess. The other thing we did want to talk about, and we kind of out of time a little bit, was some of the talks of VR and artificial intelligence and machine learning, and some of the more, I guess, dystopian takes on what life could become. A lot of people, a lot of philosophers are discussing this, especially a lot of links between AI and, once AI and VR come into play, and, we have all these devices that lead us to more and more immersive experience, what's going to happen in society. And we touched on some of this.
I said this is being a positive note.
Well,
anyway.
I'd
It just
say
depends on how
a
you look
more
at it.
intellectual note. How's that?
There you go.
Um,
Okay, go ahead.
I think we'll try and talk through some of those challenges that are there next time. But we're hoping to get back on the podcast horse. So sorry about the slight delay, but we're gonna start trying to put out more episodes.
So, any feedback from the audience? Like, I think we've already had a few people shout out to us on Twitter and on Reddit. Feedback's good for us. Let us know if there's other things you want us to cover, or if you want to send us some smellovision hardware to try out, or we're open to trying and testing out new ideas and whatever news we're presenting.
Yeah, or if anyone is willing, if you guys want to work on some cool projects or anything like that, and if you either have questions, we can try and get you on the global VR Slack channel. And if you need help with resources, or if you want to just hop on the podcast and have a chat with us about any of this stuff, feel free to let us know. We'll make it work somehow, and we really want to try and see if we can engage audiences further.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess if you want to reach out to us, we have a bunch of ways. We're on all social media sites. There's our website, current.com, so cvrnt.com. And then we're also on Twitter at cvrnt, and we're on YouTube, and we're on Facebook, and I think we're on Instagram. So check us all out. We're everywhere. Okay, exit intro music that we don't have. Wait, that'd be outro music.
Yeah, outro. We need outro and intro music. Okay. All right. Well, this is Ragz. I'm on Twitter at Brown Channel, BRWNCHNL. I'm not super active yet, but I'm getting there hopefully soon. No,
don't listen to him. He's not getting there, but he's out there lurking.
I'm trying to start with lurking and then move from lurking/stalker to instigator/troll. And
there you
I feel
go.
like that's
is that the pathway?
I feel like that's the only path you have. So
okay, and this is Kirk signing out at the VR PM. I'm on Twitter, and I've been dropping into Altspace occasionally. So if you see me, give a shout out.
Okay, all right. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Alrighty.
See ya.
Adios.